Hi everyone, welcome back to the second episode of my series, Decades of Action, in which I watch each of the films selected by Tom Breihan in his column for the AV Club website, History of Violence, which is about the most important action movie of each year, counting from 1968 to the present. And this one, of course, is Sam Peckinpah's Western The Wild Bunch, which is notorious for its incredibly graphic violence and its unrelenting shootout that closes the movie. It's basically 4 solid minutes of constant, unrelenting gunfire. Of course, it's notable in another different ways. Breihan, in his essay, which you'll find linked in the description below, talks about how this was a rare Western that really didn't make the main characters out to be heroes. The cowboys are pitiless opportunists. They steal, they kill, they really don't care about a lot of people aside from themselves. When the movie begins, they pull a bank heist, but as it turns out they were set up by one of their old crew, a bit shades of Pat Garrett hunting down Billy the Kid. Pat Garrett was a member of Billy the Kid's posse at one point. That character is played by Robert Ryan. His name is Deke. Forgive me if I'm reading some of these names, but I'm not familiar with a lot of these actors. I know William Holden from Network. He plays the main character, Pike. He's sort of the leader of the group. And his best friend, Dutch, is played by Ernest Borgnine. Those guys I know. The rest of them I'm not so familiar with, except for Edmond O'Brien. Edmond O'Brien was the main character in a 50s mystery called DOA, which was remade in the 80s with Dennis Quaid as the main character. I'd actually seen that movie way back in the day, but he's significantly older in this film. He's the old-timer of the bunch. Got a big bushy beard, looks kind of like Stephen Lang in Tombstone when Stephen Lang played Ike Clanton. The other guy I recognized was Alfonso Arau. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Arau, maybe? A-R-A-U. He played one of the members of a general's posse, a self-appointed Mexican general who's basically dictator over his, little area of Mexico, exploiting the people. Herrera, basically, this actor, played the principal villain in the Steve Martin Short, and Chevy Chase comedy Three Amigos. And I'm like, hey, is it that guy? It is, isn't it? Yeah. I think I'm going to, encounter that a lot in this series. I'm like, oh, I recognize that guy. I had no idea he was in this movie. Otherwise, there's Jamie Sanchez as Angel, the Mexican member of Pike's gang. And you have Ben Johnson and Warren Oates as brothers, Tector and Lyle. Those are their names, the characters' names. Now, one thing that I noticed about movies like these, especially if you have an ensemble, is that the focus tends to be on a few specific main characters, and some of the other members of the gang, as close-knit as these characters may be, they sort of get short shrift as far as character development. In particular, the brothers, I really can't say that I know very much about either of them, which is odd because there's one scene in which, after the gang pulls off a train heist, they pass around a bottle of whiskey. But by the time it gets to one of the brothers, and I don't even know which, the bottle is already empty. And I figured maybe this would pay off at some point later in the movie. He maybe felt slighted or something like that, or maybe he might have an apology coming. Sorry, we didn't save that last swig for you, something like that. But it never happens, it just sort of goes unremarked, and I'm wondering why exactly that moment was in there. Not really sure. Anyway, as far as the plot of the movie goes, I should basically go through a little bit of Sam Peckinpah's filmography, probably. After he made this film, he went on to do Straw Dogs, which is a very famous 70s thriller with Dustin Hoffman and Susan George. He did The Getaway, not, of course, the 90s version of The Getaway with Alec Baldwin, but with Steve McQueen and Ally McGraw. Steve McQueen, of course, was the main character in Bullet. Pat Garrett and the Billy the Kid, which I actually watched a few years ago for my 1973 series. James Coburn as Pat Garrett and Chris Christopherson as Billy the Kid. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia with Warren Oates. And in the 80s, his last movie was The Osterman Weekend with Rutger Hauer, along with a couple other noteworthy people like Dennis Hopper. Yeah, he's known pretty much for his hard-edged violence and pretty hard-hitting shooting style. I noticed that both this movie and Straw Dogs has this sort of rhythmic editing style that isn't dictated by necessarily what happens on screen, but there'd be a cut every, with some regularity. It isn't always like that during the action set pieces, but it pops up every now and again. It's just sort of odd to see something like that. But that was sort of, I think, the style of the time. Or maybe it was just Peckinpah style. I'm not sure. But I know that there was more rhythmic editing like that in other movies of the 60s, at least that I've noticed. I haven't seen a lot of them. Of these other films by Peckinpah, I've seen Straw Dogs, Pat Garrett, The Bill of the Kid, and I saw Osterman Weekend a really, really long time ago when I was a kid and, sneaking an R-rated movie viewing on cable without my parents knowing about it. That was also a bit shocking at times. Anyway, so the plot of the movie is after they get foiled by this heist, and find nothing but steel rings in their bags instead of coins of any value. They realize that they've got these guys after them. They're being led by one of their former members. That would be DAC. And so they make a run for Mexico, and when they arrive there and meet up with some of Angel's family and the people that he grew up with, they learn that there is this as I said, self-styled Mexican general who is basically exploiting them. And when they come across that guy, they get into some trouble almost immediately because one of the women that the general has acquired forcibly turns out to be a former lady in Angel's life, and he's so incensed that she would be with this guy, with his general, this scummy general and his men, that he just shoots her. He just shoots her right then and there. That could potentially get them into a whole bunch of trouble. But the character of Pike, William Holden, he comes up with a quick solution, which is, hey, look, we're skilled gunfighters. We steal a lot of stuff. Why don't we steal something for you? We'll work for you. He says this to the general. The general's like, okay, great. As it turns out, there's a shipment of Army American arms, basically for the armed services being transported by train. If you can get me those rifles and ammunition, we'll call it square. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do that. Oh, and he offers to pay them some gold, of course. So they pull off this train heist, which is a really great set piece, and they manage to do it without killing anybody, really, as far as I can tell. They basically unhitch the train and send it off down the tracks with the people that are guarding the train in the passenger car. They leave that there, and once they unload all the arms down the line onto a wagon, they send the train hurtling backwards in the other direction, and the guys have to get off the train fast along with their horses before it crashes in. Then they do the exchange of the arms, but that doesn't go quite as planned. Once the general figures out that Angel has actually diverted one of the cases of rifles to his own people so that they might defend themselves against the general, he's just like, I'm not gonna, that doesn't fly with me, and so he basically takes Angel as his prisoner. And the men in the group, the rest of the men in Pike's gang, they're like, well, we can't let that fly, so we're going to go get him back. And that's when that big shootout occurs, essentially. So that's basically the movie in a nutshell. Like I said, the ensemble of the gang basically tends to focus mostly on Pike, Dutch, and Angel to the detriment of the other characters. We don't really get to know the brothers all that well. We don't get to know Deke all that well, the guy who's hunting them, their former member. I guess we know enough about, just sort of understand what's happening. But like I said, I couldn't even tell the brothers apart from each other. They were indistinguishable other than how they looked. simply because they didn't seem to develop personalities of their own. So that's a fault of the movie. Other than that, I think it's a really good movie. I actually did see this movie years ago, probably like 96 or 97. They had it showing at the IMAX Theater at Navy Pier in downtown Chicago, which is a massive, massive screen. But to be honest, I don't remember all that much of it. I really didn't get into the story at that time. I couldn't have told you before rewatching this movie what it really was about, other than the fact that it was a Western with a huge, massive, gory shootout at the end. Which is a great scene, which is a really exciting scene. And a lot of people have, including Breihan, have commented about how it seems to have inspired John Woo. And I can certainly see that, seeing as how they intercuts a lot of regular speed and slow motion, the way Woo does. You'll have a guy basically shooting a machine gun or shooting rifles, and then that will be regular speed, and then you'll cut to the people he's shooting, and they're getting shot and falling, but in slow motion. So that contrast is really distinctive of something that John Woo does a lot, or has done in his action movies. I'm not really sure what he's up to these days. I haven't seen a new film from him in quite a while. Red Cliff was a movie that he went back to the Far East to make, but I've never seen it, unfortunately. And I haven't seen a lot of these Peckinpah movies either. He's done a lot of them besides the one that I've mentioned, but those are sort of the ones that I know by name anyway, the ones that I'm familiar with. But yeah, really interesting movie. Great acting from everyone. They're all sort of grizzled types, which is fun. Excuse the noise, that's the heat coming on. Yeah, this has been an interesting watch for me. Like I said, I haven't seen this in a long time, so it was really interesting to catch up with it. And a recommendation, certainly a recommendation, if nothing for its significance in influencing cinema that came after it. The next film that I'm going to be doing is from 1970, and Breihan's pick from 1970 was a film starring and directed by a guy named Jimmy Wang Yu called The Chinese Boxer, a movie that I'd never heard of before, never seen before. That'll be interesting. So thanks very much for watching, and of course, if you want to check out Breihan's article on The Wild Bunch and all of his others on this series that he's doing, and we're not really in partnership here, I'm just sort of following his lead. But yeah, all that stuff is below, so you can check it out. And my Facebook page also for this channel is below as well. Thank you very much again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.